the television version of Strategies for Living. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. I'm delighted that you've tuned in. Join with me today here on Strategies for Living. Well, you know by now, we're all about helping you and I live healthy lives, body, mind, spirit, and relationship. We do that by engaging in important conversations with folks we like to call life strategists each and every time that we do Strategies for Living. And you never know where you're going to find a life strategist and when. I have been excited about Molly Corbett coming on Strategies for Living. Molly, welcome.
Thank you.
You are the founder of Outlier.
Yes.
Now, I first became aware of Outlier. You guys did an art exhibit.
Yes.
What, about a year ago?
It was a year in April.
And one of my clients, I do a sexual abuse recovery group.
Yeah.
And one of my clients mentioned to me, and so we kind of made as a group goal for them to go down and see the exhibit.
I love hearing that.
And to say that each one of them had a powerful experience, Molly, is the understatement of the year. So thank you. I've been wanting to meet you since, so thank you for coming today.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the work that you're doing. Outlier, if you don't know, folks, is on Facebook.
Yes.
And all you got to do is, if you haven't heard of it, you go to Facebook and in the search, type in Outlier, it'll pop up.
Yes.
In short, Molly, how do we describe what Outlier is?
Outlier is a fine art photography exhibit and documentary series.
We should mention that you are a photographer. Your real day job is Molly Corbett Photography.
Yes, I specialize in commercial business-to-business style photography, but this is something I get to do with my fine art side and my advocate side.
Yeah. How did it start?
Well, it started in 1978 when the babysitter's son stole something from me. And like many victims, I told and I wasn't believed. And then again, much later, years later, I told again. And the person that I told that time was my executive producer and managing partner, Chris Philipbar, who finally believed me and shared appropriate outrage at what I told her. And it grew from there.
Yeah.
I took pictures of Chris's daughter for a gift for her soon-to-be husband at that time, and established rapport with Sam. And after I photographed Sam, I realized that I could use this power of photography to tell very difficult stories, because Sam had a difficult story too, but she trusted me. And I figured if I could build that rapport with her, survivor to survivor, I could do it with others.
What do you think? It's such a good time for us to be having a conversation like this against the backdrop of what's happening nationally. Have you ever seen anything? Did you ever think that you would see anything like we're seeing in the last few months, just in the last month? Harvey Weinstein, Louis C.K.
Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey.
Untold numbers of journalism professionals and Hollywood executives.
In your wildest imagination, could you have seen anything like this coming? And what do you make of this? Does this underscore how big this problem really is?
The answer to the question is unequivocally no. I could never have imagined that we would experience what I call a paradigm shift in public mindset about sexual assault. We're even dealing with political figures at this point. Right. Republicans all over the nation are scrambling to deal with Roy Moore.
Roy Moore and the accusations that have been made there.
And I believe I just saw a message this morning that Mitch McConnell has said that he believes the allegations and he thinks the man should step aside for the betterment of his state and for the nation at large. So did I ever think we'd be in a place where the climate would be so shifted toward believing victims? No, not until we started doing our work. There's much more work to be done, but I'm delighted at the paradigm shift insofar as it makes it more feasible for victims to come forward and not feel that they're going to be shamed for telling the truth about a horrible day or a horrible year or a horrible time that has happened to them. We live in extraordinary times, David.
We do, Molly. I got to tell you, I've been in practice for 26 years. The first week I was in practice, May of 1991, I'll never forget that week. I had five clients that week. 5 new, they were, of course, I was brand new, so they were all new referrals.
Sure.
3 of the 5 came into my office with the issue, the presenting issue, being some form of childhood sexual abuse. The 4th, it was so prevalent in her history. That wasn't her presenting problem or presenting issue, but you know, you take history, and it was so prevalent in the history that we had to deal with it. The 5th was just ordinary anxiety or depression or some I've forgotten. But it blew me away. And in my graduate studies, I had one course, Molly Corbett, that even mentioned the recovery from helping people recover from sexual abuse. And the professor of that course chose, he said, you know, you can read about it. There's a chapter on this, but he didn't.
You can read about
it.
He
didn't choose to lecture on it. So here I was.
My God.
Green as green can be.
Dripping behind the ears, as they say.
And of course, I didn't walk. I ran to the nearest bookseller. Barnes & Noble had just opened, by the way. And I don't remember now whether I went to Barnes & Noble or whether I went to, we had another bookstore in the Uptown Shopping Center back then.
I bet it was Walden Books.
It wasn't Walden.
It
was a bookstore out of Monroe.
Oh, I see.
And it was a good bookstore. And I think that's where I went, and I found, thank goodness, I found Courage to Heal.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Ellen Bass.
Yes.
And I'm blanking on the co-author now, but there's a co-author. And there was a book and a workbook.
Wow.
To say that it saved my life is the understatement of the year.
At least your career.
But I desperately wanted to be able to help, but I had no real basis, anything in my educational background. I hope that's very different today.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, and you know, there are lots of reasons why victims don't come forward. For years and years and years don't come forward. I mean, it's more the practice that they'd wait 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years to come forward with allegations against their perpetrator. But
and we can see that. Let's not to pick on poor Harvey. He's
yeah. My sympathy for Harvey is thin.
I can tell. You don't have too much. But look, that's a case in point of what you're saying. Some of these people, here was a very power. This is about power and control.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, again, certainly it's about sex.
Oh, yeah.
But it's about
sex
power.
Is the tool. Sex is the tool to achieve power and control.
Right,
and Harvey Weinstein knew each time one of those young proteges was in front of him that they believed that their career hinged on how this man was going to interact with them. So if he wants to say or do something untoward with you, you're going to have to weigh that. Okay, if I say no, do I never work in this town again?
Right.
I mean, as a rising actor or a filmmaker or, you know, a hopeful producer,
He was a star maker.
Oh, yeah. He was the barrier to success.
Right.
That they had to either decide to climb over or walk away from.
Now, not everybody is abused by Harvey Weinstein, but most everyone has some element. There's some element of power and control that goes on.
Sure.
What have you learned in your journey about that element of power and control and how we can overcome that?
It's fed with silence. And it is
secrets.
It has an insatiable appetite. And it has the pandemic of sexual assault for centuries, since the beginning of mankind,
Right.
has been able to happen.
So way beyond
silence.
epidemic.
Oh, yeah.
Pandemic.
No, this is not regional.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
not one isolated area. No, this is all
Right.
over the world.
Right.
All over the world. Women and children have been, and men,
Yes.
have been victimized by powerful, coercive controllers since the dawn of time. And I think in the times in which we live, with the advent of the internet, social media, and the rise of the voice of the one, there is opportunity to tell one's truth and let the public be the judge. And because so many in the public share the story, it's getting harder and harder to lie about it and cover it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, one victim's one thing. 32, 40, 50, that's a little harder to cover up.
That's a little harder to cover up, yeah. When did you know, Molly, when did you know, I've got to step up, I've got to use my voice, I've got to use my unique talents, because you certainly have done that. Your art, your photography, people can go to Facebook, they can see it for themselves.
Yeah.
When did you know, I've got to do this?
It was a cold day in December, just a few years ago, in Virginia, where I'm from. I had been riding around in a car with a sexual victims unit detective, because my friend Chris had told me it wasn't too late, and she connected me with the detectives in that region where it happened.
Wow.
We rode around looking for the house. I knew first names, a general vicinity of where it had happened, and the year, and that's it. And we came back with nothing. It was an unfruitful excursion. But I came back home, and something really amazing happened. And my mother was able to uncover some old files and tax records, and
Really?
she found the name and address of the babysitter from 1978 tax returns.
Wow.
And I'm really glad that it happened that way, because I truly believe that was a divine moment for my mom, who was dealing with a lot of guilt about what had happened to me. And I believe in my faith, as a faithful person, that God saw fit to let Mom be the one to find that piece of information. And I knew within the hour that the man who was 16 at the time that he abused me for a period of 5 months while I was
you were
5 years old.
You were 5. So that he was virtually, for all intents and purposes, an adult.
Yes.
Compared to a 5-year-old.
Yes. Well, he was certainly a 16-year-old doing very adult things.
Absolutely.
To a 5-year-old little girl.
It was not okay.
It was not okay. And I knew within the hour of my mom screaming out from the attic, I found it, that he had passed away.
What did that feel like to you?
Oh my God!
In that moment of.
It was the floor being ripped out from under you. I was so elated with the knowledge. You know, when you search and search and search for something you feel has been lost, and you finally seize upon it and you have it, you're elated. You're on cloud 9, and then you plug that information back into the internet and do your searching and your research, and you very quickly discover that he's gone. There will be no legal justice.
Right.
It was in that point, in that very moment, that I knew that I had to do something for other victims like me, who may not ever get legal justice. But we could get something better, something more powerful, restorative justice. Because even those victims who go through the legal system and see their person, whoever that person is, incarcerated, there's something very lacking in that type of justice.
How do you define restorative justice?
It's justice that transforms the victim from being victim to survivor to advocate.
That's powerful.
It's a process.
Yeah,
and it
is.
can happen for every victim, but it needs space for it to happen. And it needs someone to believe them, someone to be outraged, and someone to encourage them to tell their story again.
All right, so that's one of the purposes of Outlier on Facebook.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It is a forum for people to tell their stories.
Absolutely.
Right?
And we create that forum in several different ways, David. I mean, we are a documentary series. We are traveling from city to city as investor finances allow, looking for the local outliers of each of those cities. We've been to Shreveport, Lafayette, and New Orleans.
How did you come up with the name Outlier? Where'd that come from?
That's a great story. Outlier is a mathematical term. It's, you know, when points are falling on a bell curve, the outlier is that point way out here that isn't like anybody else.
Right.
So that point where we fall on that curve makes us outliers. Now, we think we're outliers because we think we're alone. We think no one knows what our story is like.
And yet.
But we've become more the norm.
Yeah.
We're on the bell curve
in
terms of hundreds of thousands of victims in the United States alone. But once we go through that process of victim to survivor to advocate, then we become true outliers. Because now we are the ones who are taking a terrible story, our truth, and turning it into a weapon for healing and transformation and restorative justice. And that is where we are unusual, and that is where we are indeed outliers.
How common is it, Molly, for people to get stuck at quote unquote victim?
Rampant.
And stay there.
Rampant.
Yeah.
Rampant.
And what does that produce? That stuckness in life as a quote-unquote victim and staying stuck there, what does that life look like? What
It's
does that
emotional paralysis. It's spiritual paralysis. It's sometimes physical ailments.
I've had clients tell me that they were certain, the clients who have been the victim of childhood sexual abuse especially, absolutely convinced that, and I've had more than one say this, use this language, there's a hole in my soul.
Oh God, yeah. That nothing can fill.
Yeah.
Definitely. People think, oh, well, this is something bad that happened in 1978, Molly. You know, you had a lot of good happen in your life. You just get past it. Well, the thing about sexual assault is you never get past it until you get healing. I got therapy. I encourage everyone who comes to me to do that. I also rely very heavily on my faith, but I want to make it very clear I did not rely on my faith alone. I believe that God used powerful counselors and therapists to help me come to grips with what happened to me, go back into that space where I was assaulted, lift my own 5-year-old self up, scoop myself up out of that misery, and be a redeemer for what happened to me in 1978.
Is it fair to say that there was one part of you at least, maybe a significant part of you, perhaps this is the case with any victim, that gets frozen in time? I mean, part of you goes on and develops physically, emotionally, maturity-wise, and yet for victims who have not told their story, who have not gotten treatment, that literally it's like a part of them is frozen.
I do see that. Absolutely fair and spot-on assessment. I've seen victims that when they're hit with troubles and trauma, that age where they were victimized becomes the prevailing personality. They don't handle those moments well. They handle them very immaturely, prematurely, and I think it's because they are locked into that age where they were first assaulted.
You want people, of course, folks, we want you to go to your Facebook and go to Outlier.
Please.
You want people to tell their stories there.
Yes, that's the first step.
Why is that so important? Why is it so important to tell?
Because it breaks the silence.
Okay.
And that silence that we talked about with cases like Weinstein is what allows these perpetrators to go on and on and on. And we know statistically that the number of perpetrators to victims is very small. There's a lot of victims that are victimized by the same person.
Right.
And they seem to have a target age too. So, you know, if you know someone from your past that targeted you at the age of 13, look and see how many 13-year-olds are around them. It's very telling.
So one of the things that it sounds like you're saying is, even if it happened to you at 7, 12, 13, and you're now 40, you're now 50,
44.
You're now 70.
Yeah.
It's never too late to tell your story, and that story is powerful,
Yes.
even and perhaps more powerful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your story is your weapon against guilt and shame. It never belonged to you. It is not yours to carry. It belongs on the shoulders of the perpetrator. And part of Outlier's mission is to bring that shift. We have a threefold mission. We are raising awareness, dispelling victim stigma, and we are fostering restorative justice. And restorative justice is all about getting those negative feelings off of ourselves. How at the age of 5 am I the reason why I was victimized by a perpetrator?
Absolutely.
How?
None.
Right.
Zero.
No
None.
chance.
Nada.
No chance.
Yeah.
But I would say to
and yet,
any
how
victim,
many years did you perhaps carry that?
Over 30.
Yeah. As I must have done something. It must have been me.
Why wasn't I worthy of being protected? That's the thought that ran through. Why wasn't I worth protecting?
Yeah.
And I know every victim asks themselves that question.
Yeah.
It's not, I was worthy of being protected. Why didn't they protect me? It's, why wasn't I worthy? Because we truly believe in that victim status that for some reason we weren't worthy of being protected.
Now we should also say, with Facebook, and I'm not extremely Facebook savvy, but I do know you can send private messages
Absolutely.
and things like that.
And they have.
You are an advocate.
Yes.
And you're an advocate. You've actually, I don't want to go into specific cases. I don't think that would be correct. But in many cases, you have, through that, your advocacy, through the Facebook page, helped connect people with to the proper authorities.
To law enforcement authorities.
To law enforcement,
yes.
and help them move along.
That is
and move their case
probably one of the most gratifying things about being the creator and founder of Outlier. Two things. Number one, seeing victims transform before my very eyes and telling their stories as a weapon for healing for themselves.
Over and over.
Over and over.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
It brings passion to my chest and tears to my eyes.
Yeah.
But the second thing is to be able to connect victims who aren't sure how that process goes to the law enforcement authorities who are waiting to take their stories down.
And it's intimidating. You know, when you think about it, it's for many people, most people.
And I would say most people, yes.
Have not had the whole idea of talking to a police officer, or talking to a law enforcement, or talking to a district attorney or a judge is intimidating. We don't want to go into court. We don't want to go into the...
We don't want to get involved.
We don't want to get involved there.
Yeah. And really, you start to question the details of your own story. Is this bad enough?
Yeah.
Is what happened to me bad enough?
Well, and from hours and hours of working in the counseling room, also, am I remembering this correctly?
Sure.
Did this really happen?
Right. Did I conjure
make
this
memory?
up? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you know, there was a time in our not too distant past in the United States where repressed memories were very deeply denigrated.
Right.
In the 80s. Right. But we know now, and you know better than I, David, in your line of work, that repressed memories are valid. There's a study of them. We know how to utilize and access those memories in clinical ways that permit us to get the information that we need to help bring people to the legal justice, but also to the restorative justice that they need. You
recently at LSUS, maybe you will here at BIPSI,
That's
later.
Certainly the plan.
But you had a reading. You had people from the community come. Some people came and read their own story.
Yes.
But you also had local folks.
Yes.
Who stepped forward.
Yes.
For people who could not read their stories. People like Bill Joyce.
Yes.
People like
Councilman Jeff Everson.
Came forward.
Commissioner Stephen Jackson
came forward and read the
Cedric
stories.
Glover, yes, they read those stories for those victims and gave those victims' stories voices. And I'll tell you, David, those victims were in the room listening, and they found it very empowering to have someone like Cedric Glover reading their story for them out loud.
Wow.
42 stories, 2.5 hours of stories, and we're going to do it again. We're not going to do it for 2.5 hours. I think we all went home thinking, okay, we need a special treat today, and we need to call it a day, because that was a Monday morning, and it was a heavy, heavy load for everyone in that room.
Yeah. You mentioned the documentary. So
Yes.
the documentary, one day we're going to see an Outlier documentary, huh?
Yes, you're going to be tuning in week after week to see where we're going next and who we're going to talk to. And the pilot's ready.
Wow. So if people who are watching us want to participate, best way to do that is through the Facebook page,
Absolutely.
Outlier?
Yep. Come
Okay.
to the Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Outlier Stories. You can direct message my team there, and you can know that your story will be held in deepest confidence. And then we're going to decide together, me and that sender of that message, what the next right thing to do is for them.
That's
That may be
wonderful.
counseling, it may be a spiritual advisor, it may be clinical help. You know, you just never know where people are. But
And it
we
may
are-
just be continued advocacy.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
but we are set up to answer those needs, whatever they may be.
Molly Corbett, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and visit with us today.
I'm honored
here
at the
on
invitation,
Strategies.
David.
And
Thank
we'll
you.
have you on the radio program also, because this is, and we'll have you back here. This is advocacy that needs to be ongoing.
Ongoing, yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you, David.
You bet. Thank you, Molly. Folks, thank you for tuning into Strategies for Living. If you enjoyed our conversation today with Molly Corbett, will know that we do these kind of things each and every time we do Strategies for Living, whether here on television or on the radio. On the radio, you can find us, News Radio 710 Keel, 9:05 to 10 every Sunday morning, and on HealthyLife.net out of Los Angeles, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. every Thursday afternoon, and of course, always at www.strategiesforliving.com. For Molly Corbett, I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. I'll see you next time here on Strategies for Living. Great job.